Alrighty, hey, it's like 30 seconds after I cut the camera from the last reading vlog clip that you guys saw, because I have a lot of books to talk about that technically should have been lumped into that last reading vlog, but I've got a type going, so I might as well just lump all these together. So, it has basically been brought to my attention that Audible Escape is going away, which is bad news bears for us romance readers. It sucks a whole lot of butt. So I basically have decided to spend the entire second half of October just binging all of the romance that I have downloaded in my library from Audible that is going away in a couple weeks. And it's been wonderful. It's honestly been lovely because I've been in a heck of a slump of not just reading, but like life in general, and all that I want to do is diamond paint and listen to smut. So that's what I've been doing. So let's pull up Goodreads and start back with the first one when I started this whole stint. Okay, so I started with a Carrie and Cole book because I've always wanted to read Storm by Carrie and Cole. It's a book that I think a lot of people have recommended to me because it's a, like, snowed in together, but also, like, tattooed bad boy romance. It was steamy. It was not amazing, but the sex was on point. So I'm sure if you guys are watching this, most of you are going to be romance readers, so that's going to be what's important to you. I gave it 2 stars though, because there were some serious problematic issues that I had with it, and I've kind of come to terms with my romance where it's going to either blow me away. I'm gonna love everything about the romance, the characters, the setting, the tropes, how it plays out, the pacing of the romance. That's gonna make or break an amazing book for me. Or I'm just invested in the smut of the book, which is fine. This is one of those cases. The story itself is not great. The characters are not good for each other. The pacing is not great, but the on-page bonin, it's great. So she's an author. If you want to check her out before your Audible Escape goes away, by the time you guys are seeing this, it's probably already gone, which is a huge bummer. But she's a good one. Next, I also listened to Inked by Lauren Landish and Willow Winters because I've never read either of those authors. So they co-authored an entire series called The Bad Boy Next Door romance books. I don't think a lot of the books actually have anything to do with each other. I think it's just kind of a whole series of the bad boy next door type of things. This followed this steamy gentleman who you guys are seeing on the screen. I don't know why I need to hold the phone up for you. Who is a tattoo artist, runs a tattoo shop, lives next door to our female protagonist, and they do naughty things. 2 stars. That's falling in the same vein as I'm not actually investing in this story for the plot. The plot is the shirtless man on the cover. I finished up the last 2 Mariana Zapata books that are available in Audible Escape that I haven't read yet. I've read all of her sports romance ones, plus a couple more, so I'm kind of just going back through her backlist and finishing out what I can of hers. I think I have 3 titles out. No, she had a release this year. I think I have 4 titles left of hers to read. But I did Rhythm Chord and Malakin. Is that what the name was? Yeah. This is her rockstar romance. It follows a girl who is twins with her brother who's in a rock band, invites her to go on tour with them to be their merch girl, and she falls for the lead singer of the band that they're headlining for. Other way, the headlining band lead singer is who she falls for. And in true Zapata fashion, it's a slow burn romance, which just, she does it well. Her pacing is just, you can't stop. Like, I've never read romance that I get so sucked into like I have with hers. This is, case in point, the exact opposite end of the spectrum, because there's generally only one sex scene, and it is usually at the very end of like a 400 or 500 page long story, but you love the characters so much. Like, I feel like I laugh through her books and I just grin like an idiot when I'm reading her books because I just adore her characters so much. They always have really good banter back and forth, and her female leads are always really witty and also really I don't want to say tomboyish, but they're definitely not your typical damsel in distress romance lead. Like, they hold their own, they don't need the guy, they don't understand why they're falling for the guy, and it's kind of that dynamic, and I eat it up. I love it. So I gave this one 4 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I also then picked up Under Lock, which is her MC romance, which I'm not a huge fan. I think both of these kind of got pushed to the back burner for me because I'm not a huge Rockstar romance fan, and I'm also not a huge Motorcycle Club fan. Neither of those things are super appealing to me, but if Zapata's writing it, I'm gonna read it. I gave this one 4 stars too. I thoroughly enjoyed it. This one is falling more in the vein of The Wall of Winnipeg and Me, where the dude is just a dick for no reason. It follows a girl who ends up taking a job at a tattoo parlor because she has to, because like she has nothing else in her life, and this is a place that her cousin got her in with like an interview with, and she ends up being the receptionist at this tattoo parlor. And Locke Dex is the male lead, and he is the owner of the shop, and he is just an asshole to her for literally no reason, which is a character trope that she has in a couple of her books that kind of rub me the wrong way, but you still love their interactions, you still love them talking to each other and interacting, and like the sexual tension that builds. I don't know how she does it, but she does it so well. I still gave this one 4 stars. Oh yeah, and he belongs to the Motorcycle Club. The Motorcycle Club part is like a very small part of the story, and I think that's why it worked for me, because I don't generally like biker guys. Like, that's not a thing that appeals to me. So it was like a smaller part of the story, so I think that's why I was cool with it. I do like tattoo artist stories though, so that part worked for me. So those were the last 2 Zapata books that were available to listen to, so I did those. I did finally read the second book in the Full Tilt duet, which was All In by Emma Scott. I didn't learn my lesson as far as not listening to this in public. Still listened to this at work, and I still had to like hide out in other buildings where people weren't because I was just ugly crying on my way to work, on my way home from work, while I was there. I now fully comprehend that Emma Scott is going to like rip your heart out and stomp on it, and you're gonna enjoy it. You won't. It hurts. It's very painful. So this is definitely an author that I am going to keep in mind when you just need a really good cry, like a really good full body heaving sob fest. This author is the one that'll bring it out of you. So, I mean, that's a visceral reaction, and in my mind that constitutes a really good writer. So, she's good. She's real good, because Full Tilt was not that long of a book, but it destroyed me. So I gave it a couple weeks, and then I picked up book 2 because you know kind of where book 2 is going. It still broke me. Like, I knew what I was signing up for, and I knew that it was going to be an entire book about grief and the grieving process and 2 people like healing through their bond of grief. Oh my god, it still hurt so good. It was rough. So if you've ever read Emma Scott, you know what I'm talking about. So I gave this one 4 stars. I think I gave Full Tilt and this one 4 stars. I feel like I'm gonna bump them up to 5. They're honestly so good, but it's just like torture reading them because it's just so painful, but she's so good at it. So that's not really a reason to like take a star away. So I think I'm honestly going to bump both of those books up to 5-star books. Next, I picked up... Ooh, I was also trying to get through all of the backlist Devney Perry books that were still available, and The Birthday List was available. And I think that was honestly the last one of hers that hadn't been taken out of the program yet. A lot of titles have been being pulled by the authors already before the program goes away, which sucks. But I listened to The Birthday List, and this was the first book in the Mason Jar duet, I want to say. This one, in true Devney Perry fashion, is a small town romance, which is my favorite. I just adore small town, and all of her stuff takes place in Montana, I want to say. I'm pretty sure all of her series take place in some sort of small town mountain Montana feeling. This follows a woman who loses her husband. Like at the very beginning of the book, we basically see the opening scene of her husband going to the store and not coming home. And then the story takes place 5 years later as she starts to fall for essentially the detective who takes over the case. years later, but it doesn't really have that much to do with that part of the plot. It's mostly her starting her own business. She opens a restaurant where she sells everything in mason jars, which is the cutest idea ever. And it's her basically kind of like just starting her life over again. And the romance and her small town family feels are just the best. So Devney Perry definitely writes some harder hitting family dynamic things with a lot of like bonding in the relationship. Like there's a lot of like emotional bonding before we get to the physical bonding part, which I appreciate. It's done well. So I gave that one, I think, 3 stars. It wasn't my favorite of hers. I still love the Jameson Valley series by her. That's my type of small town series that I like, but this one still did it. So the next book that I finally got to, I actually have the physical copy of this because I ordered it from a Polycon because I was supposed to meet Corinne Michaels and Melanie Harlow, but I ordered it through Corinne Michaels' like virtual signing thing, so hopefully I'll be able to bring this and have Melanie also sign it. This is Hold You Close. I adore Corinne Michaels, and I'm fairly new to Melanie Harlow, but both of them write small town romance, so they are a good duo for me. I'm gonna be honest, I did not like this book. This one did not work for me. This one is kind of like a second chance romance, where our couple like hook up in high school, and then the guy just is a complete douchebag and ghosts her, and this takes place like 20 years later when they are reunited over something traumatic, because that's generally what Corinne Michaels writes into her books. Some sort of horrible trauma happens to one of them, and then they have to like heal together. That's a very common theme in this video. Now that I'm saying it out loud, I seem to have read a lot of those. So that storyline is fairly common, and I don't have any issues with that. I actually think it's really well done, usually. My main issue with this was the guy was just a dick. It's kind of the typical small town Hallmark Channel movie trope where the woman is like a businesswoman who, is moving back to town for whatever reason to solve whatever issue. My main issue with this one was that the characters just didn't click for me. Like there was not the tension and the like spark that I generally like seeing between characters, because this is very much a second chance thing, but I feel like there wasn't enough of a book. Like this is a very short book. There wasn't enough of a timeline to actually see the bond to excuse the behavior that the characters were excusing, if that makes sense. It's one of those relationships where if they would just freaking communicate, all of their problems would be solved. It's kind of a plot device that I just really get irritated in romance with, where the obstacle that's keeping the couple apart, because let's be real, that's like the plot of all romance, is like you've fallen in love, but there's something holding you back. I don't like when that something holding you back is the lack of communication. Like if they would just talk to each other about the things that they have issues with, happily ever after, at the end, the book would be over. So this is one of those cases where the guy was just a douchebag and like not mature at all. And this book has raving reviews about it. Like people love this book. Don't think it was done well, though. I feel like if you like this type of emotional healing type of story, like any of Corinne Michaels' other books, like they're all very similar storylines, but it's like developed better. So I gave this one like 2 stars. I honestly want to give it like 1. I was irritated by the end of it. Let's wrap up this section with a positive review. I really wanted to get to Tegan Hunter, and the only book of Tegan Hunter's that was still available to listen to in the Escape package was the first texting one, Let's Get Textual. Tegan Hunter's titles are just perfect. They're so cheesy, but they're so good. She has the entire like food series, like the A Pizza My Heart and Don't Let Me Go, but this is her texting one. Let's Get Textual, come on, that would make me pick it up off a shelf just out of sheer curiosity. So her books clearly do not take themselves too seriously, and I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. It was light and fun and happy and sexy. It was just kind of like everything that I'm looking for when I want a good contemporary romance that's a fairly easy thing to listen to. So it basically starts with the guy calling her with the wrong number. Like he is supposed to be calling a work client and he calls her instead, and they just kind of have weird banter, and then they just start texting each other, which, is that realistic? I don't know. Would that actually happen? I have no idea, but I think it's like the cutest thing ever, and it was done really well. It had like a tiny little bit of conflict that was resolved peacefully, and it was just, I thoroughly enjoyed it. If you're looking for a really fun, quick, easy, good romance, this is definitely an author to check out, at least from my first impression so far. I liked it. So I gave that one, I think 3 stars, just because it was nothing significantly amazing, but it was thoroughly enjoyable, and it made me smile the whole time. So that is where I'm going to stop this section of the reading vlog, because I've already been talking for like 15 freaking minutes. Hello! Alright, we are back in a reasonable amount of time this week. It is only Wednesday the 28th. I'm pretty sure my last check-in was still in the 20s, somewhere like 22nd, somewhere around there. But I have more of an update for you. I am plowing through romance right now. Let's pull up Goodreads to see where I was in my last update. Let's see. I know that I talked about Let's Get Textual by Tegan Hunter. Since then, I finished Horrid. This is the only non-romance book that I want to mention. I talked about it in the last reading vlog, though. Perfection. YA horror perfection. The ending of that book, oh, it was so good. It's exactly what I want from YA horror. It is quick, it's paced really, really well. The ending is exactly what I want from horror ending. Like, I was screaming at the pages of the book to end the way that it did, and I'm so 5 stars. Loved it. Okay, back to romance. Let's see. I have this book. Hold on. All right. Ooh, I rolled. I'm on a rolly chair. Okay. The next book that I read is Against the Ropes by Sarah Castile. This was not great. I feel like this entire vlog is just going to be me going back and forth between things that I thoroughly enjoyed and horrible things. So we're going back to the bad area. So I gave this one 1 star. Looking back on it, it was not terrible. Like, it should probably be a 2 or a 3 star looking back on it. But this follows a girl who gets kind of a part-time job where she like helps as like an okay, I remember why this is bad. It's all coming back to me now that I'm like thinking through it. This is a girl who is an EMT who takes like a part-time gig as the like medical assistant for an underground fight club, and there she meets Torment, who is the love interest. First of all, we're not going to talk about their cage names and how closely they resemble the Black Dagger Brotherhood names. We're not going to go there. We are going to go towards the fact that we have a trained EMT who wants to be a doctor, but faints at the sight of blood and literally gets sick when she sees any form of violence. I would love to see the science behind this. Like, the very first fight that she sees, like the first punch that she sees thrown, she's literally tossing her cookies. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Out of all career paths that you could have picked for this protagonist, you decided that an EMT, the person who is on the scene at the peak of an emergency, who sees the worst stuff that you can see in the medical world, can't handle seeing the violence happen. I'm sorry. So that was red flag number 1. Red flag number 2 was how incredibly unhealthy and toxic this relationship was. It was insta-love, it was a lot of like bad boy, just, I don't know. It tried to be very tropey with a lot of the stuff, but it pushed buttons that I don't like to be pushed. Like, we have Torment, who is the guy who is just all confident in the bedroom, is doing all of the things, starts to bring some kink into it. This is going to be a touchy subject for me. The whole bringing BDSM into romance books can be done very well. It can also be done horribly. 50 Shades of Grey. So our very first scene of anything that is remotely sexual or kinky, he takes her on a motorcycle ride into the middle of the woods, middle of nowhere, where nobody can see them, and ties her with a rope naked to the bike and then walks away. 1, There is zero consent. Consent is my biggest pet peeve when it comes to bringing kinky stuff into romance books because it's very rarely actually discussed. I am all for BDSM lifestyles, okay? We're not gonna get into like personal life, but I am all for it because it is the best form of communication you can have in a relationship. But if you're just gonna toss it in as like a fun taboo thing in your like sexy time book, and there's going to be zero consent to any of this stuff, there's going to be zero conversation about how your sex life is going to go in a brand new relationship, red flags should just be bursting out of the ground like it is the crop of the season. And she was just like, I think I'm into this, even though it's terrifying and I didn't agree to this whatsoever. I think I'm real into this and I'm going to just forgive him. No. Okay, I'm feeling heated in this video, so I gave this 1 star. I will likely read the rest of the books because I have them. Somebody sent me the first 4 books of the series, and I do like sports romances where the male is in peak physical condition and is such an alpha male thing, so I'm trying to give this author a second chance because I know we're going to follow the other fighters in the next couple books, and a lot of the other fighters don't seem as bad as Torment did. I feel like maybe this was just a bad jumping off point for this series. Maybe this was not the ideal first male to have in this series, but this one was a whopping 1 star. Probably should have been 0 stars, but I digress. Okay, let's move on. Next, I went through and I binged this entire duet plus novella plus the entire spin-off Wags duet in like 3 days. So I have always been kind of nervous about this series because I know there's controversy surrounding Elle Kennedy and fetishizing male-male romance, and I'm aware of the whole situation, but I've always loved Elle Kennedy books. I've always adored Serena Bowen books. Both of them are like my go-to reading slump authors. Like, their books are some of the most addicting books I've ever read, and they are very easy to read. They're usually very fun to read. They have really good friend groups and dialogue in these books. So I wanted to read this. It was so good. This actually discussed a lot of things in a healthy manner as far as the LGBT representation in professional sports and just coming out, and it was the most precious romance ever. It was adorable. So I gave this, and the second book is Us, and then the spin-off novella is Epic. I gave all of those, I think, 4 stars. I think the novella I gave 3 stars because there was nothing super substantial about it. So I read this, and then I read the Wags, the Wives and Girlfriends spin-off 2 books. I don't know if there's going to be more because I feel like there is a lot of potential for more of those books to be brought in because there's definitely more team members on the hockey team, and there's definitely more female side characters that kind of were hinting at being new ones. So if anybody knows if they're going to do more of those, let me know. But the spin-off series was Good Boy and Stay, and I did like that both of them included dogs. Like, rescue dogs were a thing in both of the books, so I appreciated that. I gave both of those 3 or 4 stars, somewhere around there, question mark. Those were not as standout as this one was to me. I feel like this relationship was just so good. In case I gave 0 synopsis for both of these, this follows basically 2 guys who have grown up friends for like as long as they can remember, playing hockey together, and how a relationship starts to form when they're in their like final years of college. And it's handled well. I liked it. So that's my thoughts on those. As I am filming this, I have finished. Let me go grab it. I forgot to grab that one too. As I'm filming this, it is the second to last day for reading Reborn Tomorrow by Tessa Bailey. This is the romance pick that we chose for the book club this month. I might make an entire separate video over this because I feel like I've been very ranty in these reading vlogs recently, but here's the truth. This book is bad. So I basically listened to the first section. Listening was the key word because there's no way I would have actually been able to physically read beyond like 10 pages of this book. So I listened to the first section of this book, which I think was like the first 50-ish pages. Oh, it was first like 80 pages. and promptly realized how terrible it was going to be. Which, okay, Tessa Bailey seems to be an extreme case of hit or miss with me, particularly, but also with a lot of other people. Like, Tessa Bailey is a best-selling author. Like, she wrote the Fixer Up book that everybody was talking about last year, and the second book to that was not good. The first one was great, though, so I feel like Tessa Bailey is extremely hot and cold when it comes to what works for some people and what doesn't. Things that are fairly consistent in her books, though: the smut, the sex scenes are dirty. Like, they are spicy, and you can tell that she loves a good dirty talking session. So that's fairly consistent in these books. And let me tell you, this book, there were many issues that I had with this book. It felt like a 14-year-old's Twilight fan fiction. Like, the very first scene was so cringy and unbelievable. All of the characters sucked, the pacing sucked, the storytelling was, it literally read like something that I would have written as like a 12-year-old who just recently discovered the vampire world, and I just really wanted to write a vampire romance with no world building, with no character development. I just wanted to get straight into the romance, and that's what this book did. It was not good. It was so disappointing because Tessa Bailey, like I said, is a very established best-selling author. Why did this make it through to this point? It was bad. That being said, I listened to the first section and was like, oh no, and I talked to a lot of people. Most of the people DNF'd it. The people who did like it were still kind of like iffy over it, and I decided to just binge through the entire end of the book and just move on with my life, and it didn't get better. It got worse. It still had crazy intense sex scenes, but it was so out of place in this book. Like, this girl was a virgin, this girl had zero experience with dating, has literally like never been in a relationship, never had sex, and all of a sudden is in this like real kinky vampire relationship, and she is just on board, and there's no communication. That's a key word for this video. I think that's just a main thing that I really need in my books, and this one was just not it. Everything was bad. I might make a separate rant video about this. So here's my dilemma. One of you very, very kind peoples sent this to me off of my wish list because I was so excited for this, because I do love Tessa Bailey 50% of the time. Paranormal romance, I love it most of the time. So I was like, this is the makings of something great. So one of you amazing people sent this to me, and I feel horrible not liking it. And on that note, I also have this one, and I have zero desire to continue on, other than the fact that the only character that had any granule of redemption for this book, this is what this book is about. Like, it was a side character that we met in this. It was the only character that had any sort of depth to them, and it was the only person that I like somewhat liked seeing on page. This is her book. So that's the only thing. Should I read this? I really don't know. I really don't know. This was so bad though. So that's where I'm sitting with this reading vlog. It's gonna be a long, ranty one. I hope you guys were prepared to listen to me spout off about like 20 romance books in this vlog. So if you stuck through to the end, have a candy bar or something. I don't know, because this was a doozy of a video. So that is where I'm gonna sit with this whole reading vlog. We're gonna start fresh, start a new reading vlog from here on out. I have a couple days left of Audible Escape. I have like 3 days left of that, so the next reading vlog might start with romance, but it also might start with other things, because it's peak Halloween time, and I've got many spooky books just looking at me, so I might do those. We'll see, but I will check in with you guys in my next video.